Hey folks, this is Kalani. The big talk of the town is the classic WoW beta and what the recreation of the very first version of World of Warcraft means for the rest of the game's future. Alright, well, sort of a first version. It's vanilla with a few touch-ups and we're starting in a relatively late patch, but that's part of what makes Classic so interesting. It's like a vanilla plus experience. We will see a handful of changes while still keeping the values and the core of what made the game so appealing in the beginning intact. But with how much the game has changed, does this older version of Warcraft still work? I know a lot of people say this will run entirely on nostalgia, and after spending a few days or maybe a week with the game, everyone will realise just how bad vanilla was and why the current version of the game is so much better. It's an interesting theory, and I would love to see how many people do stick with the game when it finally releases, but with Classic WoW being a game, the most important thing is whether or not you can have fun with it. So with all the back and forth, the doomsayers and the tryhards, the nostalgia versus reality, is Classic World of Warcraft actually fun? I want to talk about quite a few different points, different topics that people usually bring up when they say vanilla won't be a fun game. The first thing is the slower gameplay. Classic slows everything down, and I mean everything. Your attack speed will start decently slow, you'll have a chance to miss on every swing, especially if you haven't leveled up your weapons, which is a thing again. Casters have longer cast times to begin with, and getting whacked will knock your cast bar back quite far, so it's super important to not engage in melee range whenever possible, and your spells can be outright resisted by monsters. To add on top of all of that, monsters have more health, and they do more damage. Mobs are straight up just more dangerous in Classic, right from the start at level 1 all the way up to the cap of 60, so you need to be a bit more careful when compared to BFA. You can't just stomp through a whole bunch of mobs, aggro everything in sight, and expect to come out alive. What you pull matters, which makes it a little more interesting while leveling. Can I pull those two at the same time? What if some mobs have a pet? That's something I genuinely need to worry about, prepare for, and play well to overcome. Playing a Warlock, I usually sent in my pet to aggro one mob while I DPS down the other one, and by the time I was done, well, my imp had probably died at that point, but that was fine. I can take one mob on its own. I can't take two bashing in my skull, but more importantly, interrupting my casts. It works out pretty well most of the time, and it was fun overcoming something so simple. Perhaps the most important thing that harder mobs encourages, though, is grouping up. There are always going to be camps of several mobs that you'll pull all at once if you aren't careful, and God knows everybody's gone down into a mine and just can't get back out again without dying. But grouping up is crazy efficient in Classic WoW, especially if you have some pets, a class who can heal, and someone a bit beefier. It doesn't even have to be a healer spec, because you don't really have specs in Classic. You kind of pick and choose what to focus on, rather than limit yourself to just shadow magic or just frost magic. You can get it all in Classic, which means that every shaman can heal at the lower levels pretty well. Every priest will be able to keep their friends alive at least a little bit. So smash a few different classes together in a group and suddenly everything becomes a whole lot easier, at least if you don't go crazy. You won't end up dying just because you pulled 2 or 3 mobs at any rate, which is always nice, of course providing your group is paying attention. If everyone's AFK, you may as well be playing solo, but it's kind of hard to explain because it seems so backwards, right? Everything taking longer should be more annoying, not more fun. That's how it should be, that makes more sense. But not in this case. It's really strange. Because it's a little more difficult and you have to think about what you're doing, you're more engaged, and when you do pull off something awesome and crazy, it feels pretty epic because you know you absolutely should have just died, but you just barely scraped by somehow, some way. That's a really awesome feeling. It works the same way with loot too. When things are rarer, it means a lot more if you get something cool or shiny. When I was deciding which class I wanted to play for the beta, I rolled a few tunes, leveled them up a bit, and was trying to weigh up the pros and cons of each. But when I started the Warlock, I swear it was within the first handful of mobs, before I even hit level 3, I had 2 bags drop for me. I've never been so excited to see a bag drop. It seems stupid, but I just had to get up and tell my wife and brother-in-law, oh my gosh, I just got 2 bags and I'm not even level 3 yet. The crazy thing is, they didn't even laugh. They couldn't believe how lucky I was, and they were just as hyped because they knew how rare those bags were at the very start, and it's what everybody fought over when they were starting with their little groups of friends. It seems like something so small, but it had me smiling from ear to ear. So yeah, things might take a bit longer to get through, but I think that's actually adding to the fun right now. Alright, so what about things like mob tagging and slow respawn rates? Because these are massively different when compared to BFA right now. If you didn't play in Vanilla, or before Wrath or Kata, I actually forget when open tagging was introduced, but back in the day, if someone hit a mob first, that mob went grey. Exactly how if the opposite faction grabs a mob first right now, you can't get XP or loot from it, except in Vanilla that happens if anyone but you or a group member hits the monster first. If you have a lot of people in one area, it can be very difficult to even snag a mob to get credit, which increases the time it takes to finish 1 or 2 quests. But there's a really simple answer to this. Group up. There's very little reason not to group up if people are on the same quest. It's easier to take down monsters together, you have less downtime, you don't have to wait for respawn timers, you can share the majority of quest objectives outside of actual quest items you need to loot, and you make new friends along the way. Whenever I run into any trouble or just even strolling into an area for the first time and I see people killing the same stuff I need, I ask them if they're on the same quest, and if they are, well, we should team up. I think I've spoken to more random chaps out and about in Classic this week than I have to randoms in the entirety of the BFA expansion, and part of that is absolutely on me. I could start a conversation with anyone and everyone I came across in BFA. I just don't need to. In Classic, starting up that dialogue makes my life easier in the long run, so it's almost always worth reaching out to people around you. You might make a few friends, but even if you don't and you just end up grouping for 10 or 15 minutes, just enough to finish the quests you're on, that's perfectly fine too. It's still going to be easier and faster than trying to fight them for the quest mobs the entire time. I also feel like most people are somehow happier to help in Classic right now. Maybe that's just the honeymoon period and everyone wanting others to have a good time, or maybe it's because the vanilla experience really does push you closer together, whether you want to be social or not. Asking where certain quest objectives are, asking for help with elite mobs or group quests, grouping up for standard quests, trying to start groups for dungeons, or just chatting away in general chat. It's really weird trying to compare it to the current game, but people do seem more friendly and more willing to work together. Probably because everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is struggling with the same things in that specific area, so that automatically gives everyone common ground. Something interesting about quests, though, is that you're not really given any help with quests whatsoever. You're told what's going on, what you need to do to complete the quest, and with some quests you're given a rough direction of where to go to get the quest done. Quests with very specific landmarks will include those landmarks in the quest text, which is super important because you're not going to have any markers on your map for quest objectives. Nothing is going to glow in the world, so you don't know what you have to pick up. Most of the time you have to actually read the quest to see what's going on, so you can search for boxes or crates or special mobs or mushrooms, that kind of thing. I think I have more fun with quests in Classic than I do in BFA, just because I am forced to use my brain a little more. In BFA or in any future expansion, I can just play dot to dot on the map if I want to, without paying any real attention to what I'm doing, as long as those objectives are getting ticked up, 3 of 3, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm in the correct area to get it done, job's a good one. Obviously, that's a choice you have to actively make. You can read everything in BFA as well if you want to, but with Vanilla forcing you to do a bit more legwork, it really imprints this kind of stuff. I still remember to this day, the majority of quests in Vanilla, what I have to do and where I have to go. I might need a refresher for some of them, but as soon as I see that quest text and get the general idea of what this quest is going to do, I probably can remember a good chunk of it, just because it's imprinted from having to learn it so long ago. You also don't get any quest markers in Vanilla on your map for quests to pick up, though you do get a dot on your map for quests to turn in, so you need to pay attention to that. So when you're in a new questing hub, but you really have to look around. Search all of the houses and buildings, make sure you picked up all the quests before heading out on your next adventure. There's nothing worse than hitting up a specific questing area only to return to town and pick up a quest you missed for the exact same camp of pirates or raptors or whatever it may be. So you have to actually look for yourself in-game on screen instead of relying entirely on your maps. But honestly, I kind of think this one is a bit of a non-issue. If you have more fun with the no-help style of questing, you should have a blast in vanilla. If you want an extra bit of help, I'm sure an add-on will resurface which does the exact same thing as Quest Helper. If you're not sure what Quest Helper is, it's basically what the game does for you right now in BFA. Little circles on the map telling you where to go, what to loot, and what monsters to kill. It was an add-on before it was baked into the game, so you're probably going to have it one way or another if you want it in Classic. Now, I mentioned that pretty much everything was slower. That includes leveling. It's going to take you a while to get out of the starting area, and the larger areas past that will take even longer for a variety of reasons. Either which way you look at it, leveling is slower, but leveling is also very different in Classic WoW. You don't learn spells automatically. The talent system is very different, and you get key spells and systems at certain milestones which change with the class. Every 2 levels you will get new spells or ranks of spells which you can train, but you'll have to go find a class trainer who can train you first. These are typically available in most major cities, as well as the starter area, so you should always know where your closest trainer is. You don't have to go back every 2 levels, but it's cool knowing that something new is waiting for you when you pop back to a main city. The talent system is very different from what we have in current WoW 2. You get a talent point every level past 10, and you can spend it in any of the 3 spec trees that you have access to. There are builds that specialize in different things for each class. Obviously, if you want to heal as a druid, you want to spend more points in restoration, but you don't necessarily have to be able to heal every now and then, especially at lower levels. Everyone gets every spell available to their class outside of the talent trees, regardless of where you spend your points. That means a lot more spells on your action bar, sure, but that also means that you can use frost and fire magic on your mage, as well as the occasional arcane explosion. It gives you the freedom to choose what you want to do with your spells, and it also makes you feel like you're playing a class instead of just playing a single spec. So almost every level gives you something to be excited about, whether it's a new spell, a more powerful rank of a spell you already know, or another talent point to slot into wherever you want. Your dings will mean a little bit more in Classic, which makes leveling more fun for me. You also have quite a bit to look forward to when it comes to class quests. Vanilla had a lot of development time to create a unique experience for most classes. Maybe that's why class quests have declined since Vanilla. Maybe it just takes too much time to implement that kind of thing. But you can look forward to a variety of class quests which take you on a journey to learn new key spells and abilities. Druids will have to earn their new shapeshifting forms. Shamans will have to earn new totems and elements. Warlocks will have to earn new demon summons. They're all available in the form of quests. Some are pretty lengthy, but ultimately that's what Vanilla was about, a journey to learn something new. I also feel like classes feel way more defined in this first iteration of Warcraft, but that's probably because they gave every class a bunch of spells which were designed for that class, and they didn't really care about balancing any of it. Mages get mage spells, warlocks get warlock spells. If they aren't balanced, who cares? It's not a huge deal. Ret paladins spend more than half their time auto-attacking. Not really what I would call fun, but paladins still feel like paladins because they wanted to create a paladin class. They didn't want to aim to create a paladin class that could keep up with the warrior class they already had. Class fantasy is also in a bit of a different place. The warlocks are all trying to keep things hush-hush because they aren't really supposed to be around and no one trusts them. I wouldn't trust them either. They're playing with the same forces of death and destruction that nearly wiped out life on Azeroth. But being a warlock and having to go down into the depths of a random bar, or having to skulk around in the cleft of shadows, makes you feel like a warlock, like you maybe shouldn't be running around with a demonic pet on show, learning to summon your new servants down in the dark, away from prying eyes. It's kind of crazy how far we've come. Legion did an amazing job with class halls, making your class feel special again and like you are actually playing a warlock or a paladin or a mage and making that a huge part of your experience. But classes seem to have taken a backseat once again in BFA. I hope classes become more distinct in the future, but if that's something you're interested in, then Classic does a pretty good job at it. Another large concern with Classic is the travel time. This is probably why everything takes so long, by the way, because you have to run everywhere. No mount until 40, no epic mount until 60, fewer flight paths dotted around, and there's no way to get a flight path without running to an area first. You're going to be running for a very large chunk of your game time. Sometimes you can't take shortcuts either, because running past a bunch of monsters that are the same level as you is a death sentence, so it's best to stick to the roads for the most part, even if they do go the long way. Now, this is something that I am torn on because it's kind of empty time. It feels a little artificially inflated, but at the same time, everyone has to go through the same thing. It's also pretty satisfying making it to a distant destination. I was pretty happy when I finally made it to Thunderbluff for the first time, partly because I knew I wouldn't ever have to make that run again, but also because the time that it took me to go out of my way and get the Thunderbluff flight path right then would save me a lot of time in the future. Now I can just fly there. I'm still not too sure how I feel about the travel taking so long, but I feel like this would be made much more pleasant with a group of friends to travel alongside you. We had some plans for when Classic releases for real, but with this being a beta, a few people didn't get invited and a few others just don't want to spend the time on a beta when they know it's already going to take a lot of their time when it releases for real in August. One thing for sure though is that when you do get your first mount, that's going to feel awesome, and when you get your epic mount at 60, people will be looking at you saying, that guy or gal has put in their time, farmed the gold, and I can't wait until I'm up there on an epic mount as well. That's a pretty neat feeling. Alright, I kind of blabbed more than I intended to at this point, but it's safe to say that I am having fun with Classic WoW right now. I am a little hesitant to spend too much time in the beta because I'm looking forward to the release, and I don't want to get anywhere close to burning myself out in the beta, so I'm taking things a bit slower than I usually would. I also don't have the little group that I planned for the proper release, so that should make everything even better. I honestly didn't think I would have this much fun. I thought I would get a good kick of nostalgia and be done within 30 minutes, maybe an hour at a push. But I don't know what to tell you. Some of the stuff that I thought would just annoy the sharpies out of me has actually made things more fun, and I'm still happily chugging along on my Warlock. So yeah, Classic WoW is actually fun. At least I'm having fun with it and plan to play on release. I probably have a different approach to what I think should happen with Classic going forward when compared to some of the purists I've seen lurking around, but for the most part I'm pretty stoked for the August release. I hope anyone who has the beta will give it a shot, even if you think it's not for you. The charm of vanilla might just surprise you. It's a bit more simple in its design, it doesn't give you quite as much help, and it is going to take longer, but that's part of the fun. At the very least, give it a shot, and if you're interested in any other expansions being introduced, bear in mind that their existence, their recreation, relies entirely on this first installment of Classic expansions doing really well. So support the Classic stuff if you want to see more Classic stuff. I didn't think I would be having as much fun as I am, so I'm pleasantly surprised. It's still kind of early days though. I could still be running off of nostalgia alone, but if this is all nostalgia, then damn, it's doing a really good job. We'll see if it lasts. If it does, I don't see any issue with playing both BFA and Classic. It sounds like they will rotate between updates anyway, and the dev team would be silly to overlap any of the major stuff. And they're both available with a single sub. You could feasibly play both versions if you really want to. Hey, you could even play BFA to earn enough gold to buy a token to be able to play Classic if you really want to. That'd be a really roundabout way to get your subscription, but hey, you do you. I do hope they add some stuff into vanilla when all of the other content is released, but that's a topic for another video. What do you think of Classic WoW from what you've seen so far? Are you going to give it a try when it releases, or maybe get a beta invite? Are you still on the fence about Classic, and if you are, what worries you the most about the vanilla experience? Is it the time? It's probably the time, isn't it? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.